glad to welcome back on the show now from ESPN, the SEC Network, Laura Rutledge. Laura, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well. Glad to have you on as always. And before you hopped on, we were actually talking about, we saw Bundesliga soccer in Germany come back. We've seen NASCAR come back. Golf had an event over the weekend. And so slowly but surely, we're starting to get some live sports back. Does that give you hope, Laura, for the college football season, for the pro football season coming up?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, we knew that we would get to the point where eventually things would start to come back, thank goodness. And it felt like, my goodness, an eternity since we've had live sports. And so it's just so welcome. I think we're all so thankful for it. And look, I mean, of course, the reasons why this has happened are so much more important than sports, but it is something that takes our mind off of all of this craziness. And so I think that's been really special. What I would say about college football, and we can get into this a little more, it's so much more complicated than all of these other sports. It just is, right, for all the variety of reasons that we know. And I think I'm optimistic about a college football season happening. I'm very optimistic about the NFL season happening. And I think that these sports that have already come back, definitely provide some optimism that fuels that as well.
You're exactly right, Laura. There's way more challenges for college football to come back. And the NFL, well, they're one union. They're 32 teams, and we know that they'll all move forward together. I think one of the biggest moving parts with college football is everybody's been affected different. And the state of California is different than where we're at in the state of Louisiana. New York's different than Florida. And you have commissioners and ADs and presidents of different colleges that all kind of have different opinions. And so it does feel like we might get college football back, but some might actually be left behind.
Yeah, it's been fascinating in talking to a lot of these ADs and conference commissioners around the country and college coaches as well. Just the vast differing of opinions and people are all over the map here. I mean, and it's, understandable that a lot of this is shaded by politics. A lot of it is shaded by the lines that people sort of follow no matter what, based on other things. I think that's what's coming into play here that's even adding further complication to it. But what I would predict right now, and this is just, this has changed because it changes almost every day, but there's been a shift over the last couple of weeks, I would say, that's happened where more people are saying, you know what, we just need to figure out some way to have a college football season, whether that means we don't have as many fans in the stadiums. Stadiums are not at capacity, whether that means we have to play without fans for some period of time, whether that means we have to see college football played without fans for an entire season. Some way of getting a college football season in and hopefully getting it in relatively on time. That seems to be more the line of thinking over these last couple of weeks, whereas before it was, well, no, we absolutely cannot have college football without fans. That's where most people were. And I still hear a lot of people saying that. There are a lot of coaches that say if it's not safe for fans to be in the stands, then how is it going to be safe for my players to be on the field? But I think more and more they're continuing to get a lot of consulting from medical officials and people who are very close to tracking this virus and its certain different ways that it changes every day and all of that too. I think they're of the mindset of it may be a little easier to control at least a team and maybe the opposing team, at least that amount of people than it might be to control and to try and limit spread of a virus with thousands of people in the stands. But it's going to be crazy, guys. And toward the end of this week, we have the vote coming up as it relates to just the SEC, where the presidents are going to vote on whether or not they can have these players come back to campus. That's going to really be where I think we start to see a lot of dominoes begin to fall in all of this.
Catching up with ESPN's Laura Rutledge here on Hanging with Hester. Now, Laura, we've had some sports that have already started in the NBA. You can go across really the world. And when you look at soccer and the EPL and MLS soccer and all the different leagues that already had started their season, baseball didn't start their season, but they were in spring training. Now, it seems like they have different challenges than the teams and the leagues that are trying to start in the fall. Do you expect the same positive movement in some of the leagues that already had started?
I think it's complicated when it comes to baseball. With the NBA, I think they can finish their season, and I think they're in a good position to do that. And you're probably seeing some of the reporting that's come out just recently here today about Orlando being a potential prime spot for where they could do some sort of playoff scenario. They are able to do things on a smaller scale. For baseball, and look, they need to figure out some way to get a baseball season in my opinion, for a variety of reasons. But I do think that they're up against some unique challenges. And with the latest proposal that the MLB has put out, the Players Association is kind of on this other side of the fence, and they're trying to meet in the middle somewhere. And that's where it just gets really complicated, whether or not that's going to work. And look, I will continue to feel this way if the baseball season doesn't happen because people are grappling over the millions of dollars that they will or won't make. That's really disappointing. It seems to me like they have to find some way to make this work. And I understand that everybody's got their rights they need to stand up for here and their money that they're trying to pocket. But when so many people are losing jobs across our country, if you see a sport not come back because we're literally talking about millions that they're, trying to fight over, that's going to be a really bad look.
Laura Rutledge joining us here on Hanging with Hester. Laura, I want to circle back towards games without fans, specifically down here in the Southeastern Conference, where there are some of the best atmospheres in sports, and it's not because of what goes on between the lines, but what goes on outside the lines. Saturday night in Tiger Stadium, barbecuing at Duty Noble Field, Rupp Arena. You've spent so much time in all those places. What does Southeastern Conference athletics look like if there's no one in the stands?
It's hard to even imagine. And look, I think we have to wrap our mind around it a little bit because I do think it's a possibility. But it certainly wouldn't be the same by any stretch of the imagination. And it will be interesting to see how we would even handle that from the television standpoint. We've heard, even Fox talk about would they pipe in crowd noise for NFL games? And you might see some of that. I've wondered, my goodness, if you could hear every single thing that was happening on the field, what the coaches are saying to the players and what the players are saying to each other and so on and so forth, how does that change how people operate? Is Coach O trained to whisper to his players during the game? I don't know. I'm trying to imagine Coach O whispering right now. It's hard to imagine. And so I don't know how all of that looks. But what I would say as it relates to the Southeastern Conference, most of the ADs that I have talked to in our conference, and the ADs are making decisions here, the presidents are making decisions, the coaches really aren't making a lot of decisions. They are consulting people on these decisions. They're making their opinions known. But the people who really are the decision makers, they continue to say that the majority of schools in the Southeastern Conference would try to play with fans, at least fans in some capacity. And there are models that they're looking at daily about how to social distance fans in stadiums, maybe requiring facial coverings, maybe, like I said, not having these stadiums at capacity. I think that's more likely as we sit right now than seeing stands completely empty. I just don't know that that's going to, really work for anybody. And it's not just the atmosphere, guys, it's the money. And unfortunately, all this is fueled by money. We're talking about in the NFL, about 15% of their revenue comes from fans coming into the stadium. So much of their revenue is TV based. But in college football, most schools and your big-time programs, only about 25% of their revenue comes from TV. The rest of it is from fans and from donors. And so you cannot see it really, it's not really sustainable for them to continue to have these football season at all without fans. They might be able to survive for one season, maybe some of the bigger programs and, D1 programs that are in the Power 5 conferences, some of them may be able to survive, but I think we'd be talking about a dire situation for some of the middle ground programs and even some of the smaller programs. I don't know how they survive without fans.
Let's shift toward a little bit more positive tone in conversation here. This would have been the week of the SEC baseball tournament in Hoover, which is one of my favorite weeks of the entire year. You've covered that. It's 12 teams in one city for a week of marathon of baseball. Some of your memories and kind of your feelings towards that week in Hoover.
Oh, my goodness, it's the best. And LSU has historically done really well there. So I've had a lot of fun covering some of the LSU games there. And look, just that tournament will always be really special to me. It was kind of my first opportunity to cover college baseball for ESPN, and I had been begging to do it. My background, for those that don't know, was in Major League Baseball before I got hired by ESPN. I was a Padres reporter and the Tampa Bay Rays reporter, so always have loved baseball. My husband, Josh, of course, played baseball at Alabama before he was a professional player, and so it was just a special tournament to us anyway. And so to get an opportunity to be a reporter on it was probably one of the greatest joys of my whole career. And so some of my favorite things have happened at that tournament. You talk about some crazy, I mean, the fog game, right, a couple of years ago. We also had all of those, games that have gone into extra innings. We've had rain delays beyond belief. We've had things get really wild at night where, I don't know, I've been in that dugout down there doing duck calls. I've been, I had like one time where I had this random foot that was down there. It was like a lucky foot that came off of some mannequin at a local store. I mean, you would not believe some of the weird things that have happened there, but it's what makes that tournament so much fun and so special. And I think I would speak for all sports fans right now. I mean, we just miss that, and it's something that I do think we will appreciate so much more whenever it does whenever it comes back, and whenever we all get to be back in those types of environments, which will happen again. I firmly believe that.
Laura, I did forget that you spent time out in San Diego. I think we actually just missed each other. I was out there from 08 to 012 with the Chargers, and then you were right behind. I believe you were there in 2013. So real quick, because
2013.
Yeah, so I actually have my Chargers gear on today, and I'm the only person in Louisiana that actually owns some of this, and so I get a chance to ask a San Diego question. What was your favorite spot in San Diego?
Oh, my goodness. There were so many good spots. I lived in Little Italy because it was walking distance to the Padres Stadium, to Petco and everything. And so I would walk to work every day, which, golly, at the time I was 24. I did not realize how good I had it, okay? Like living in San Diego at age 24 in Little Italy. But I love Sandini's pizza in Little Italy. And my husband and I, we are still on the quest to find another slice that's as good. And we have not actually been to Italy, so I figure if we went there, we might find something close. But nothing has quite stood up to the pizza in Little Italy. So I would say that was my favorite spot.
Laura Rutledge hanging with Hester here on a Wednesday. Laura, one more and we'll let you go. Your time so much appreciated. I'm curious your perspective on this. Obviously, there's a ton of value in the sideline reporter, whether it's injury reports, anecdotes that y'all pick up during the week, things that y'all pick up on the sideline. But personally, I'm not a huge fan of the in-game coach interview because I've interviewed a lot of coaches, and they're not all that talkative on Monday or Tuesday, much less when their team is playing. What's your kind of perspective and goal when you're talking to the coach in the middle of a huge game?
Yeah, look, I would never try and pretend like the job of a sideline reporter is rocket science, but I do think it's a lot more difficult than people realize. And I would tell you that some of my most anxiety-filled moments in this business have had to do with those halftime interviews. And like you said, they're difficult because you're trying to get these coaches to say something. My philosophy usually is you're trying to find something that's going to give you some sort of insight into something that's happened in the game. But I have always found that keeping it simpler is better. And that takes a little bit of courage at the position because you don't want to be accused of you're just asking some innocuous question that anybody could ask. But honestly, the best responses I have ever gotten have been from the simplest questions. So as simple as, we just saw you talking to the ref. What were you saying? What were you asking? That's what I think people at home want to know more than anything else. If you go into it with hey, you came into the game saying that you were going to try out a 3-4 scheme for the first time this season to try and throw off your opponent, and it really hadn't been working so far, and what are you going to do with your Mike linebacker? They're like, get out of my face. Do not tell me what you think you're seeing in the game. So as much as you can remove your own bias from the question, I think that usually works best, and that's always my philosophy. But you never know what you're going to get, and I think being as reactionary as possible and always keeping the fans in mind at home is usually the best practice in all of that.
Yeah, I've only done it twice, and it was spring football games with Coach O, who I know extremely well, and I still was trying to find a way to grab him to ask a question. And
that's the same as getting Saban in the middle of the Iron Bowl. Exactly the same. So I can't imagine live action Iron Bowl with a coach who's losing the game.
It makes me sweat just to think about it.
Hey, Laura, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate having you on.
Real fast, guys. The worst one is when you've got to interview a coach before the game, right before he's going to kick off a college football playoff game. Those are the worst ones. Those are the ones that really make you sweat.
Hey, I have seen that in person. Yeah, congratulations to y'all for getting their attention and getting that done, because I get sweaty palms thinking about it, and I've never done it.
I know. It's scary.
Laura, thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.